On March 18, 2026, French President Emmanuel Macron stood at a naval group shipyard in Nantes and officially named the largest, most expensive, and most lethal warship ever constructed in European history. Forget the acronym PANG. The next generation flagship of the French Navy will officially be named France Libre. Today, we're breaking down what could be the most ambitious European defense project of the 21st century. France has officially launched the production phase for an 80,000-ton nuclear-powered supercarrier that is designed to radically alter how Europe fights from the sea. The France Libre is not just a replacement for the aging Charles de Gaulle, it is a massive generational leap. We are talking about American-made electromagnetic catapults, twin next-generation nuclear reactors, and an Airwing that will seamlessly blend manned 6th-generation fighters with autonomous 40-ton stealth drones. But building a $10 billion megaship comes with staggering engineering and infrastructure challenges. So how is France pulling this off? Why are they buying critical launch hardware from the United States? And most importantly, how will this ship allow the French Navy to fight high-intensity wars in the 2040s and beyond? The current French carrier, the Charles de Gaulle, has been the backbone of French power projection since 2001. It is a highly capable ship, but by modern standards, it is relatively small. It displaces around 42,000 tons and is 261 meters long. Because of its compact size, its flight deck can get easily congested, and it physically cannot support the heavier, next-generation aircraft currently in development. The France Libre completely shatters those limitations. When fully loaded, this new ship will displace between 78,000 and 80,000 tons. It will stretch 310 meters from bow to stern with a massive flight deck spanning up to 90 meters across. To put that into perspective, it is nearly double the tonnage of the Charles de Gaulle and approaches the physical footprint of an American Nimitz or Ford-class supercarrier. But a ship this massive requires an immense amount of energy to push it through the water at combat speeds. Deep inside the heavily armored, 100-meter-long lower hull compartment, the France Libre will be powered by two brand-new Technip K-22 pressurized water reactors. These aren't just upgraded legacy systems. The K-15 reactors on the current French carrier generate roughly 76,000 shaft horsepower combined. The new K-22 reactors will produce a staggering 220 megawatts of power each. This will drive a fully electric propulsion system utilizing 3 shaft lines, pushing the 80,000-ton Fortress to a top speed of 27 knots with virtually unlimited range. More importantly, these reactors are designed to operate for roughly 10 years between major refueling overhauls, drastically reducing the ship's maintenance downtime. But here is the fascinating logistical reality of building a ship this large. France literally did not have a parking spot big enough for it. The France Libre will be built at the Chantier de l'Atlantique shipyard in Saint-Nazaire, the exact same facility that builds massive commercial cruise ships. It is the only dry dock in France capable of handling the hull. But once the ship is built, it has to be based somewhere. The historic Vauban dry docks at the Toulon Naval Base were built in the 19th century and were perfectly sized for the Charles de Gaulle. When French naval planners ran the math on the France Libre, they realized the angled flight deck would literally hit the sides of the harbor. To solve this, the French government approved a massive infrastructure project in late 2025. Starting right now, in 2026, they are carving an entirely new 360-meter-long, 60-meter-wide dry dock out of the land and sea between the existing Milhaud and Brégaillon berths in Toulon. This facility will be completed by 2035, just in time for the carrier's sea trials. Interestingly, the plans include a massive second quay, heavily hinting that France is keeping the door open to potentially building a second carrier down the line. Now let's move up to the most critical part of any aircraft carrier, the flight deck. The flight deck of the France Libre will cover 17,200 square meters, a massive 5,000 square meter increase over its predecessor. But the real revolution isn't the size, it is how the aircraft will get into the sky. For decades, both the US Navy and the French Navy relied on steam catapults. Steam is incredibly powerful, but it is also violent, mechanically complex, and requires a massive amount of fresh water and maintenance. For the France Libre, Paris made a highly pragmatic decision. Rather than spending billions to invent their own system from scratch, The French government signed a $41 million foreign military sales contract with the United States to purchase the exact same launch and recovery hardware used on the new American Ford-class carriers. The France Libre will be equipped with General Atomics' electromagnetic aircraft launch system and the advanced arresting gear. EMALS uses a massive burst of electrical energy, which the new K-22 nuclear reactors have in abundance, to generate a linear magnetic field that accelerates the aircraft down the track. This provides a vastly smoother, more precisely calibrated launch. Why is this precision so important? Because the future of naval aviation isn't just heavy manned fighters, it is drones. If you use a massive steam catapult to launch a lightweight composite surveillance drone, the violent jolt can literally rip the drone's landing gear off. EMALS allows the flight deck crew to dial in the exact amount of kinetic energy required, reducing airframe stress and saving millions in aircraft maintenance over the ship's lifespan. Early in the design phase, the French Navy debated whether to install 2 or 3 catapults. They have officially opted for 3. This is a massive tactical advantage. On the current Charles de Gaulle, the 2 steam catapults physically overlap with the angled landing area. This means the ship cannot launch a jet and recover a jet at the same time. The France Libre fixes this. By taking advantage of its 310-meter length, it will feature 2 catapults on the bow and 1 on the angled deck, allowing for simultaneous launch and recovery operations. Combined with 2 massive side-mounted aircraft elevators, each capable of lifting 2 Rafale fighters or 40-ton drones simultaneously, the France Libre will be able to sustain a sortie generation rate far exceeding anything currently afloat in Europe. A carrier is ultimately just a floating airport. Its true lethality lies in its Airwing. And the French Navy has laid out an incredibly aggressive, multi-phased roadmap for the France Libre that stretches all the way to the year 2045. When the ship officially enters service in 2038, it will embark an Airwing of roughly 30 to 40 combat aircraft. In the first phase, the mainstay of the fleet will still be manned aircraft, specifically the modernized Rafale M upgraded to the F-5 standard, supported by 3 American-made E-2D Advanced Hawkeye airborne early warning planes. The Rafale F-5 will be a radically different beast than the jets flying today. It will be integrated with the ASN-4G nuclear cruise missile, next-generation hypersonic anti-ship missiles, and advanced Meteor air-to-air missiles. But the true leap in 2038 will be the introduction of manned-unmanned teaming. The Rafales will share the deck with autonomous rotorcraft drones, likely Airbus's VSR-700 or the Schiebel S-300, which will handle anti-submarine warfare, surveillance, and logistics. By 2040, the flight deck will get significantly more crowded with advanced unmanned systems. The French Navy plans to integrate a medium-altitude, long-endurance drone similar to the MQ-9B. General Atomics is already developing folding wings for the MQ-9 to reduce its wingspan for carrier elevators, and short takeoff versions like the Mojave are being evaluated for maritime control and ISR missions. But the real heavy hitter arriving in this time frame is a stealthy UCAV derived from Dassault's Neuron demonstrator. This is where French naval doctrine sharply diverges from the US Navy. Right now, the United States is focusing heavily on utilizing carrier drones for aerial refueling, like the MQ-25 Stingray. France is taking a much more aggressive approach. France is prioritizing heavy strike UCAVs. The Neuron-derived drone will be a tailless flying wing design featuring internal weapon bays and advanced autonomous controls. Because the Rafale fighter is not a true stealth aircraft, the French Navy intends to use these stealthy UCAVs as the tip of the spear to kick down the door, penetrating heavily defended enemy airspace and suppressing air defenses before the manned Rafales move in. Thanks to the immense power of the 122 megajoule EMALS catapults, the France Libre will be able to launch combat drones weighing up to 40 tons. During early tests, the Neuron demonstrator already achieved Mach 0.8 formation flight with manned fighters with a latency of under 50 milliseconds. Finally, in 2045, the ultimate transformation occurs. The Airwing will receive the next-generation fighter, developed under the FCAS program. This 33-ton, 6th-generation behemoth will be powered by twin adaptive cycle engines, optimized for carrier landings, and will operate as the central command node for swarms of loyal wingman drones. According to the French Naval Research Institute, by 2045, drones will make up 65% of the France Libre's Airwing. This integration will result in a 300% increase in sortie generation compared to legacy manned operations. It is a fundamentally different way of fighting from the sea. So here's still another question: why France is willing to spend over 10 billion euros to build it? When President Emmanuel Macron announced the name France Libre in March 2026, it was not just a nostalgic nod to history. During World War II, after the fall of France in 1940, Free France was the government in exile and the resistance movement led by Charles de Gaulle. It was born out of a refusal to surrender and a burning desire for absolute independence. By naming the ultimate instrument of their military power France Libre, Paris is sending a very clear, unapologetic message to the rest of the world. In military circles, the French doctrine is defined by two words: strategic autonomy. France does not want to rely on the United States to fight its wars. They look at the political gridlock in Washington, the shifting priorities toward the Indo-Pacific, and the uncertainty of future U.S. administrations, and they realize that relying entirely on the American security umbrella is a massive risk. Look at their closest neighbor, the United Kingdom. The Royal Navy built two incredible carriers, but to save money, they skipped nuclear propulsion and electromagnetic catapults. As a result, they are entirely dependent on the F-35B short takeoff variant and frequently rely on U.S. Marine Corps squadrons just to fill out their air wings. France completely rejects that model. The France Libre ensures that France maintains the entire sovereign supply chain, from naval nuclear propulsion to carrier aviation to complex combat system integration across Naval Group, Technic Atomy, and Chantier de l'Atlantique. Over 90% of the program's procurement is sourced domestically, securing 14,000 high-tech jobs. Furthermore, this ship changes how France defends itself. Moving away from legacy close-in weapon systems, the France Libre will feature an advanced self-defense architecture. Using vertical launch systems for the Aster missile family and reserving massive electrical margins from those K-22 reactors, the ship is designed to eventually field-directed energy weapons, high-powered lasers, to defeat drone swarms and saturation missile attacks. It is a floating sovereign fortress. The timeline from here is aggressive. The production phase is officially underway as of 2026. Naval Group will begin cutting the steel and assembling the hull around 2031. By 2035, the massive hull will travel under temporary diesel power down to the newly constructed dry docks in Toulon, where the nuclear reactors will be fueled. Sea trials will commence in 2036, and by 2038, the Charles de Gaulle will lower its flag for the final time, passing the torch to the France Libre. For 10 billion euros, France isn't just buying a ship. They are buying a seat at the table of global superpowers for the next 50 years. The France Libre will allow Paris to project high-intensity, nuclear-powered sea control into the Mediterranean, the Indo-Pacific, and beyond, completely independent of the United States or a politically fractured Europe. It is a massive gamble, but if the French defense industry can deliver on these promises, Europe is about to get its most terrifying Leviathan yet. But I turn the question over to you guys. Do you think the France Libre will be able to compete with American and Chinese supercarriers in the 2040s? And is France making the right call by prioritizing heavy stealth strike drones over loyal wingmen? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below.